Okay, I think all the trustees are now present. I want to thank everyone for their patience in this matter. We'd have to do the Pledge of Allegiance, so can we please rise to do the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag
The flag of the
United
United States of America,
of the
and
Republic.
to the republic for which it stands,
One
one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
At the outset, I'd like to add another item to the agenda. We're going to have a discussion regarding the lateral sidewalk extensions. So that becomes item number 6. Before we go any further, I'd like to just go over the instructions because we do have 2 public hearings and courtesy of the floor. So the instructions on how to view the meeting have been posted on the village website and are attached to the agenda. The meeting is being streamed live on the village's YouTube website and via Zoom by either video or phone. For the instructions for the public hearing and for courtesy of the floor, if you're participating via Zoom, either by phone or video, you can raise your hand and we will call on residents in the order in which they do so. In order to raise your hand, you should click on the icon labeled participants and a column appears on the right-hand side. At the bottom of that window is the raise your hand button. For people calling in by phone, you can push *9 in order to raise your hand. We will let you know it is your turn by calling either your name or your phone number. And please don't enter comments in the chat column of the meeting because that does not go into the record, does not become part of the record. Will not only are seen by us and do not become part of the record. So thank you for that. Okay, first item on the agenda are the appointments. So it's bittersweet that today is, look, I think she's gonna already break down, is Charlene Delicato's last meeting with us as the village administrator. Charlene, been with us since April 4th, 2016. And was very sorry to see you go with your retirement. I know you're not leaving us totally. You're going to stay with us. But I could never have been a trustee or the mayor without your help and guidance. So I appreciate everything that you've done, all the phone calls, the emails, and the advice that you offered. So thank you so much. Who's sharing the screen? Is it going to be you? Okay, Jen, share the screen. We have a special proclamation.
Oh,
So Jennifer can, there's some time to bring,
I'll believe it. I'll believe you.
there you
Oh,
go.
wow.
Okay.
Cool.
I'm going to just read it. Whereas Charlene Delicato has served as the village administrator from April 4th, 2016 to June 30th, 2020. And whereas Charlene has performed her duties as a village administrator with the utmost dedication and professionalism, and whereas Charlene has put in numerous long hours and dedicated a great deal of personal time to the village above and beyond what was required, whereas Charlene has worked hard to make Dobbs Ferry a better community, and whereas Charlene postponed her retirement in order to ensure that Dobbs Ferry was able to make it through the COVID-19 shutdown and reopen again. And whereas I officially commend Charlene for her years of dedicated service to the village of Dobbs Ferry, and therefore be it resolved that through the authority of my office, I do hereby proclaim Tuesday, June 30th, 2020 as Charlene Delicato Day in the village of Dobbs Ferry. And the rest of this proclamation be carried throughout the village for good people, for people of goodwill to see and know. So congratulations, Charlene. I hope you retire well and that we don't lose your phone number.
You all have my phone number. May I say a few words, Mayor? I know this is going to be a long meeting, so I'm going to make this really short. It has been a pleasure to serve the community of Dobbs Ferry. The people that I work with every day have been more than outstanding. Now, I have a lot of years in. I'm retiring, so I have a lot of years in. And in truth, I have never met a more dedicated or smarter group of people. They go above and beyond all the time. And they do it most of the time on the street, many of the DPWs and the police. And their mettle was tested during this COVID, and they lived up to it. But then again, the Board of Trustees lived up to it too. The mayor was there, and I have spent many hours and I put many hours, but I get paid. The mayor and village board of trustees don't get paid. And they spend, sometimes I don't know how they do their work, because they spend innumerable hours, and all really as dedicated public servants and dedicated elected officials. So I want to thank you for giving me the pleasure of working with you all.
Thank you, Charlene. And we could just segue into the motion.
Oh, one more thing. Ed is going to be great.
So I'd like to consider a motion to authorize Mayor Rosillo to execute a professional service agreement with Charlene Delicato to be effective July 1st, 2020 for consulting services of 20 hours per month during the period of transition following her retirement as a village administrator. Is there a motion? Trustee Sullivan, second. Deputy Mayor Cassell. Is there any discussion regarding this? Okay. All in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you again, Charlene.
Thank you.
We won't be seeing, this isn't the last we're going to be seeing of you,
No.
so thank you. I also want to thank Donna for helping me, actually for doing that proclamation. So thank you, Donna.
Oh, thank you.
And Liz for putting that together. Thank you, Liz. I appreciate your help on that.
Thank you, Liz.
That brings us to further appointments. Now that Charlene is going to be leaving us on June 30th, we need someone to step into her shoes. So the board does intend to do a search for a full-time permanent administrator. However, until we can fill those shoes, we are happy to have and lucky to have Ed Manley, who has agreed to act as our acting village administrator. So I want to thank Ed for stepping into that. Ed's been with the village for many years and has many years. He was a trustee. He was with the AHRB. So he has a lot of experience and he has our full confidence in what he can do. So Ed, I don't know if you know what you're getting into. I'm sure you do by this stage. So welcome. And I'd like to consider a resolution to appoint Ed Manley as acting village administrator effective July 1st, 2020, and authorize Mayor Rosillo to execute a contract to reflect the terms and conditions of the appointment. Is there a motion? Trustee Sullivan, second. Trustee Taylor. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, and that passes. So congratulations, Ed.
Thank you. Thank you all. And thank you, Charlene, for all of the education. And I want to apologize to my wife for taking this job right now, if she's listening.
Very well said. I'd like to, we're now moving to the public hearing portion. I'd like to take a motion to open the public hearing to consider the application of 115 Broadway to add a new parking lot on their property. Is there a motion? Is there Trustee Nell, second. Trustee Patino, all in favor? Okay, meeting is now open. At the outset, I'd like to acknowledge the report from BFJ Planning dated May 19th, 2020, that was prepared on behalf of the village concerning the need for additional parking. I'd also like to acknowledge the letter dated June 19th, 2020, submitted by the law firm of Cuddy and Fader on behalf of the applicant. I understand, and maybe someone can tell me, is the
Mr. Jacquemart's just signing in.
Okay.
I just
think I lost
promoted
it.
him to a panelist.
I can't see anybody anymore. Can you hear me?
Yes.
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 What happened? Oh, there you go. Okay.
Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yes, we can. Mr. Giacomo, welcome. And can you please spend a few moments talking about your report and what your findings were and what your recommendations were?
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Board of Trustees. I'll give you a quick overview of the May 19 memo. The first thing we did is to understand and confirm the parking need at the Cabrini site. The applicant had indicated they did a survey over 2 days and indicated shortages of parking. And to verify that, we undertook a separate review of aerial maps and summarized those. So these reviews of aerial maps should be considered as a random kind of evaluation of the parking need. And we have a summary of them. There were a total of 2, 4, 6, 8 reviews. 7 of those 8 were taken during the midday period and did show fairly high occupancies ranging from 95% to 105% of the parking capacity. There was only one observation. It was at 9 a.m. that was a lower occupancy. So we conclude based on that, that yes, there is a parking shortage on that site, and 25 spaces is reasonable amount to be added. Or also, we do indicate that these kind of shortages can be addressed by adding parking or by decreasing the parking demand. We also compared the Cabrini's parking demand to the kind of data that we have through our professional organization. These are empirical data that were collected at similar sites. None of the sites are exactly the same as Cabrini, but they're similar. And looking at those data and comparing them to the operation of the various programs on the Cabrini site, we conclude that their parking demand is within a range of this kind of institution. It's not any much higher or lower than what we would expect. We looked at the commutation modes of the Cabrini employees, and they look like they're similar to the other people working in downtown Dobbs Ferry. So the kind of transportation behavior is very similar to other people in Dobbs Ferry. We then looked also at what we call TDM actions, transportation demand management actions. Cabrini had undertaken a survey of their employees, and we conclude that we recommend that more analysis should be done so that one can conclude whether TDM is feasible or is not feasible in this case. If we were to reduce the parking demand by 25 spaces, 25 cars, that's a reduction of about 13%. This kind of reduction generally needs what we call, carrot and stick approach, for people to change their behavior. So it's important to realize that it's not particularly easy to do that, but we did recommend that Cabrini should geocode the residential addresses of their employees on the main shift and evening shift, not just to see whether there are carpool opportunities, but also to determine how many people today, how many of their employees and volunteers live near a train station, within walking or bicycling distance to a train station or to a Westchester B bus stop. That is generally a very helpful piece of information to determine, what the feasibility would be of a more aggressive TDM program. And we mentioned, when it comes to interviewing employees about how they travel today, and we ask them, why don't you use public transportation? Why don't you use carpooling? there's always a number of reasons that I mentioned why they don't carpool or they don't use public transportation. And some of those obstacles can be overcome by other programs like guaranteed ride homes, variable working hours to provide flexibility to individual employees, change their work time by 20 minutes, half an hour this way or that way, and so on. So that's something that we recommended. We did look at alternative parking locations. As you know, the site that is proposed for the additional 25 parking spaces, it's kind of a small parking area by itself in the southeast corner of the property. We had one of our urban designers go out and review that location. And it is true that that particular parking lot would not block the views of the Hudson River because the cars will be parked a little bit lower. But it does affect the kind of what we feel is an aesthetic quality of the Cabrini site. It's a very beautiful kind of frontage, a beautiful green area, beautiful trees, and the proposed parking lot in that corner would affect the aesthetic value that we see in the Cabrini site. So we suggested a number, I think 6, 7 alternative locations that could provide, the additional parking. Most of those locations were what we call perpendicular parking along the existing driveways, basically along the existing driveways on the site. And they varied, from 5 to, I think, 12 additional parking spaces. The total of those parking spaces, potential parking spaces that we identified was 59. We felt that they should be investigated in more detail. And the advantage of these perpendicular spaces along the driveways is that they require substantially less pavement compared to the parking lot. We estimate that the parking lot that the applicant proposes requires about 9,500 square feet of paved area, whereas the perpendicular spaces, the same number of perpendicular spaces, would require about 4,000 square feet of paved area. So significantly less stormwater management and less disruption on the site. We also felt that from an aesthetic point of view, the alternatives that we suggested, they were kind of in front of the existing building. So if you were to walk along Broadway, look at the site, you look at the building, yes, we proposed additional spaces in front of the building. We did not feel it was such as significant a visual impact as putting the parking in that green area that's kind of an open space area. So that's in summary our review. And I had a quick look also at the response by the applicant. They kind of dismissed the geocoding, basically saying it only represents a potential for carpooling. That's not true. We do geocoding also to see how many people could use public transportation. It's very easy to do that. We have simple, GIS software programs that can do that very efficiently and very quick. I also somewhat disagree with the conclusion that the survey results indicated that no additional employees would be willing to use mass transit. That's not entirely correct. Of the 49 responses to the survey from the day shift employees, 4 employees indicate that they use bus or train today, and 2 said they're willing to use public transportation. When they asked, are you willing to use public transportation, yes or no, 2 said yes, 32 said no, but then there's another 15 that we don't know. So I would, characterize this as, that there are potential opportunities and it is worthwhile investigating that a little bit more. None of these things are easy. TDM, it takes an effort to change the behavior of people, but a lot of companies have done it. And so I would not necessarily dismiss it the same way it has been dismissed by the applicant's engineer. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much for your report and your comments. Is there, do any of the trustees have any questions or comments?
Can you just explain to the benefit of the public what geocoding is?
Geocoding is called a GIS program, and it plugs, the address of all the employees on a map, and then you can see how many employees live within close proximity to each other, how far they are. If you have employees living long distances away from the site, they're more likely to carpool than if they're living, 2 or 3 miles away. So it's a very useful tool. And it also lets you calculate, how much time it takes to come to the site and how many of them live close to a transit station and could relatively easily use public transportation. So you end up with a map, like it looks like a disease map with dots all over. And, we have done that for many clients, and it's a very useful tool to assess, TDM opportunities.
Mayor, we also have the attorney from Cabrini. I'm gonna promote him to a panelist as well.
Yeah, but
He has his hand.
Not this time, I'm not taking any comments from him. I just want to hear from the board. Is there any comments from the board?
There was
Could
also
you just explain? Could you just briefly explain to me, again, I think you mentioned that there would be less stormwater management needed. Can you just explain that a little bit further?
I didn't fully hear it. Explain the transportation demand management.
No, I think you mentioned that if there would be less stormwater management needed if you didn't use their plan. Can you explain that further, or did I misunderstand?
Yes. Well, the storm water management is a function of the amount of area that's being paved. The proposal for the parking lot in the southeast corner involves approximately 9,000 square feet. And if you do, if you build the perpendicular parking off existing driveways, it's a much less intensive pavement. So we estimate that that kind of pavement takes about 4,000 square feet. So that's the impact on the stormwater management. I should add also, the applicant's engineer has evaluated our alternative parking scenarios and has commented, positives and negatives primarily. But there has not been a detailed cost analysis that can tell us specifically that our ideas would be more expensive than the proposed plan. We have not seen any cost estimation that would substantiate that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have anything, comments or questions?
on the traffic,
No, you go, Donna.
on the traffic demand management side, it had also been suggested that Cabrini, because of its proximity to a 99 Cedar lot, that some of the overflow parking could be in there, and that perhaps a van could be supplied to take the people back and forth during the peak hours. Would that be a possibility, do you think, or is that out of the question for a TDM to look at?
In theory, it's a possibility. It's not easy to do that because we're talking a relatively small number of people. So it would end up being relatively expensive to shuttle back and forth, 25 people, because they wouldn't necessarily all arrive at the same time and so on. So it's not like, Mercy College that has a larger number of people where the shuttle bus operation is more efficient. But I think encouraging more employees to use public transportation is something that needs to be investigated a little bit more. Yeah. Yes, there are obstacles. People have reasons why it's difficult and so on, but there are also ways to facilitate it and provide incentives. There are companies or institutions that do provide incentives. They subsidize the monthly pass or Metro North or Westchester B and so on. So that is an option that I think needs to be investigated a little bit more.
Trustee Nell, did you have anything? Okay. Anybody else?
Actually, I guess my comment is just on possibly needing more time to go over the response that we got from Cabrini, because it came late Friday afternoon and there's a lot to digest, and I feel like we could use some time to discuss it with our attorney before moving forward. So that's my concern right now.
Okay. Well, I
I also
agree.
think that, oh, sorry, Vinny.
Trustee Sullivan.
Yeah, there were a lot of issues raised by the applicant that we didn't see until late Friday. But I also think that the alternative locations that were proposed by, I'm going to butcher your name, Mr. Jacques Mart, and the worst French pronunciation, are more ideal than putting in, a parking lot in the middle of Broadway that is almost abutting the street and takes away the greenery and the view shed, and all the other things that we talk about in our vision plan. So I think that the alternatives mentioned in our consultant's report really need to be investigated further before we could even entertain some of the things that have been raised.
Okay. So Jennifer, Mr. Joffrey is available? from the applicant?
It's Taylor Palmer.
Okay.
Mr. Palmer, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great, and you can
Yeah.
see me as well. Thank you for promoting me, Jennifer, and I'd ask if the mayor sees fit to also promote Ralph Perigine, our project traffic consultant and parking consultant, who is also on the line. He may not have raised his hand, but he's leaving the request to me to also have him promoted. I will be deferring to him shortly. Is that appropriate, Mr. Mayor?
It's fine, although what I just want to reiterate is that we didn't receive your letter until, not your letter, but your firm's letter until recently, June 19th, I believe it's dated. So, and it does raise a lot of issues, especially with the regarding the Religious Land Use and Institutional Persons Act that we're going to have to take a look at and consider. So I'd ask you, to this, take that into consideration when you talk and you have your consultant speak.
Understood. And we're here tonight to continue that public hearing. So we are, presenting those comments this evening, and we will ask that the board consider closing the hearing if it doesn't have time this evening to consider doing so going forward. But I'll give a brief presentation, and then I'll ask Ralph to address some of the comments. It's a tough act to follow, Mr. Jacquemart. I don't have a beautiful French accent, so I do appreciate your taking my time this evening. For the record, again, Taylor Palmer with the applicant. I'm with Cuddy and Fader, the law firm of Cuddy and Fader, on behalf of our applicant, Cabrini of Westchester, who's a faith-based, not-for-profit owner of the Cabrini property. As I mentioned, I'm also joined by the project's parking consultant, Ralph Perigine of Provident Design Engineering. I see he's been promoted to speaker. We also have our president and CEO, Cabrini of Westchester, Pat Krasnowski, who's also on the line, and Carmine Giuliano of Cabrini of Westchester. As the mayor stated, we're before you this evening for a continued review of our application for a de minimis request to install 25 parking spaces and as of right used for the premises to meet the existing and confirmed demand and, of course, the need. For the record, as the mayor mentioned, we did submit our letter on June 19th, and Ralph will speak to some of those comments that Mr. Jacquemart mentioned earlier. As is more fully detailed in that letter, the applicant has appeared numerous times before the planning board and the village board regarding this as of right parking area, and the village review has gone on for more than a year, again, for a parking lot. It's hard to believe when the village code merely provides that the minimum parking required for the property is the test that the village board is looking at to determine whether or not parking is needed. Here, the applicant's consultant and the village's consultant as presented this evening have both agreed the parking demand exceeds the capacity, and 25 spaces that are proposed would be appropriate means to meet that minimum required parking for Cabrini. Further, as this board is aware, the zoning code's supplemental parking regulations that are detailed more heavily in our letter only apply or shall apply, which is a directive, to new development expansions and increases in building size and density. on changes of uses. None of those are the case here. We are not proposing any changes. We're merely proposing parking to meet demand that's confirmed for the site.
Can I just interrupt for a second, Mr. Palmer?
Sure.
I did read through your submission that we received on Friday. I do think that it raises serious concerns that we would have to have Mr. Jacquemart and our attorneys review, but I think that there are preferred locations that our consultant has listed and he's detailed here that seem to be less obtrusive and more preferred from our vision plan and the village's perspective that haven't really been evaluated by the applicant. And while the history of the proceedings is somewhat useful, it seems like evaluating that alternatives and providing us the response to that would be the most helpful thing at this point.
Members, Trustee Sullivan, I do appreciate that comment, and Ralph will address that, and that was included in Provident Design Engineering's responses. We've also done that alternatives analysis with the planning board. So we spent 7 months reviewing that with them and identified why it was inappropriate to be located in those locations, whether it caused other potential environmental impacts, and didn't otherwise achieve the objective. So our submissions, and they're lengthy, go to that. So I do appreciate that, and I will have Ralph speak directly to that this evening, but I respectfully disagree that we have provided responses specifically to those alternatives that identify this as the best location for the site. And as put in our
You're telling us that the planning board had proposed as an alternative perpendicular parking exactly what Mr. Jacquemart has presented, because when I read Mr. Jacquemart's report in May, that was the first time I had ever heard of that alternative. And I remember I believe it was for A, B, and C, D that you guys discussed with the planning board and articulated why you didn't think those were proper alternatives. This is to me a completely new alternative that has never been visited or discussed during the process.
Absolutely. And again, we've submitted responses to the comments provided in Mr. Jacquemart's letter that I will have Ralph speak to. Again, I'm just trying to go through some details for the benefit of the board. As you identified, there's, the information came in on Friday. So I'm just trying to provide for the public and for the benefit of the board some details here so that I can have Ralph speak specifically to those issues. So if I may, I'll defer the specific question to Ralph following my brief presentation.
Let me just say this, once Ralph comments on it, we would want something in writing. We need to have a written response from Ralph actually commenting on, and I apologize, Ralph, I'm not sure I can pronounce your name, Paragine, but I would need a written report that exactly addresses the points raised by BF Planning. And I don't think the report that you submitted, the 6 pages that you submitted, actually comments on those reports. So my feeling is, that to have you speak on the letter, which really paraphrases what you've previously submitted, is not going to be enough. So I'm asking that, I'm just going to adjourn this really for a written detailed analysis. And I really want, this report was submitted on May 19th. It took a month for your firm to submit a response, and I don't think we believe that the response is adequate. And I think it would be in everyone's best interest that if you actually point by point address their needs and told us, why you disagree with the geocoding and why you would refuse to go forward with the geocoding, or why you think that encouraging public transportation is not.
In that case, Mr. Mayor, if I may, maybe we'll have Ralph address those comments made by Mr. Jacquemart this evening. We are here for a public hearing, and there were specific comments made. We have no objection to submitting a written response. We'd ask that the board consider closing this public hearing at its next meeting, as there haven't been any additional public comments outside of representatives of the planning board. So we would ask that Ralph at least be able to address the comments that Mr. Jacquemart made. And again, obviously, the details of my presentation this evening are contained.
I'm not going to close.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to adjourn this to the next. I'm going to adjourn this to the next Board of Trustee meeting so that you and your consultant can submit a detailed response to the report and indicate exactly why you believe their recommendations cannot be followed and what you've done to address those recommendations. You say you've done stuff in the past. I would like further details as to their, and I just want to know if, they're, the perpendicular spaces are preferable or geocoding. So that's what we're going to do tonight.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, we do have in our submission, there is a list of all of Provident Design submissions, and we have provided that to the village attorney previously. All prior submissions to the planning board and village board have been provided in a Dropbox, an electronic format for the board's review. And this letter just was a further synthesis, including this updated submission. So Ralph Perugine and Provident Design have submitted responses to those alternate locations and the traffic demand management plan and those specific details. But again, we'd ask if
so you're saying that this, you don't want to submit anything further? This is
no. What I would ask, Mr. Mayor, is if Mr. Jacquemart is planning to prepare any responses to our correspondence, we have sufficient time to be able to respond to it before the village board's next meeting.
Well, the next step is for you to do a review and provide information and comments pertaining to what has been spoken about today and the report in detail. And then if we decide that we need more of a response or we need Mr. Jacquemart's response, we will ask for it. But at this particular time, I'm not going to ask him to do anything further until we receive the report from your side. So,
and I'm just going to ask Ralph briefly to mention. Ralph, can you just summarize for the board just what you?
I'm not going to go down that road unless I have something in writing, because I need something in writing.
I just mentioned, Mr. Mayor, I just mean the writing that he's already submitted that's on your agenda this evening. I just want him to identify what he's submitted to your board. So for our record, it's clear that
there's no need to identify. We have the report, and I think we've gone far enough on this right now.
We understand, and we submit that we provide sufficient details for this board to make a decision and determination. Proposed parking area is the proper location for this site, and the other alternatives are exceedingly expensive and inappropriate for the project and a religious institution that is Cabrini. But we will provide.
So that is your position, but you are still going to produce. I don't want you to send us a letter tomorrow saying then that you're resting on the record if today you're saying that you want an opportunity for him to produce a report. So what are you going to produce a report? I think the Board of Trustees needs another clarifying report from your traffic and parking consultants, and that's what I'm going to adjourn for. Are you going to do so?
Ralph, I'm looking at you. You can't see me looking at you, but I'm looking at you.
I was just going to ask what additional detail exactly they're looking for, because we've analyzed each of these in a schematic level format of the alternatives that were proposed by BFJ. Several of them don't even meet the code provisions that are within the zoning code as far as parking on steep.
This is what I'm trying to avoid. I don't want a verbal comments on it, because I think as the trustees and for the record, we need something in writing to have an opportunity to review. And honestly, you've now raised an issue regarding the religious land use and institutional persons act. And I feel that it's a whole nother legal issue that we must take time to review with council to determine what that act is and what our obligations are under that act.
Understood. And Mr. Mayor, we will provide that response. I would ask, we do have Patricia Krasnowski, again, CEO and president of Cabrini. I'd like just to ask that she be promoted this evening. She has been weathering this really difficult time of COVID-19 through Cabrini and all the services they provided as an essential service. And I'd ask that she at least be able to explain to you just what every employee of Cabrini has to do when they come to the site and how they travel to and from the site. It's important for the board to understand the value of this employee parking area and the need that it has. But if the chair,
I am not going to allow that at this particular time. This is a very simple issue at this particular time. The report has been submitted in May. I just need for you guys to produce a written response as to why exactly you have not done X, Y, and Z. If you feel that you have responded to the report properly, and if you believe that you've addressed all the issues, And you can send us that in writing, and then we'll move forward at the next hearing. That's, but I do want time to review the other issues that you've raised in addition to what our consultant has raised. I want to have time to consult with our attorney and experts in this field before we render a decision. So with nothing further.
I would simply ask, Mr. Mayor, is there a
Nothing
date
further,
certain?
Mr. Palmer, I'm going to give you July 14th.
Thank you.
Wow. July 14th at 6:30 is the next public hearing. And then we'll put it on for them, and you will produce a report that's more responsive and specific to help us make a decision. Thank you very much, Mr.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
may I
Mr.
just, may I just state, the report from May from Mr. Jacquemart presented a preferable scheme for locating the parking on the property. This preferable scheme has not been analyzed. And if the board is in agreement that it is the preferable design and scheme, it really would be more than a report you were seeking. You really would be looking for a submission that took into consideration that the board is tending to looking at this as a preferable location for this parking. If that's the polling of the board, if the board is feeling that way, having a response from the applicant that simply ticks off all the reasons why they don't want to do it wouldn't really be substantive, and not the kind of report that Mr. Jacquemart was hoping for when he's now presented this less intrusive alternative scheme that has not been considered by the planning board, was not proposed by the planning board. This is a new scheme. This is a new preferable option. And if the board is inclined to provide this opportunity for the applicant to take a look at that alternative in a new light, then perhaps that should be the charge to the applicant. And
Well-
I welcome the board to chime in, but I'm
Right.
just suggesting that maybe it's more than just a point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint. We have to have an opportunity to address the especially the religious use issues, which my firm is preparing to advise you on. But if this is a preferable scheme to this board, then that needs to be stated, and then the scheme needs to be presented and put back to the applicant for consideration.
Well, certainly we can poll the board for their feelings, so.
Can I also add that, as far as I could tell, and I may be wrong, but the extent of their TDM work was just asking their employees whether they would prefer, coming by public transportation or by, coming by car. Mr. Jacquemart mentioned all the incentive programs that are out there. Has Cabrini also investigated that, the carrot and stick scenario that he was presented?
And Mr. Jacquemart started by summarizing by saying it's parking demand or lessen the demand. So, right now he confirmed that your parking study indicated that you need additional parking, but there are two sides of it. And so, I'm suggesting that perhaps the record isn't complete. And I know you would like them to consider it complete, but I don't know that they have enough information yet to talk through all of the issues that are remaining and open.
I feel that we can see that there's a need for more parking, and we want to help figure out a solution to that. We clearly have reservations about taking away the green space as to how it relates to our vision plan and open spaces in Dobbs Ferry. And so what we're hoping to find out is if the proposition of the perpendicular spaces that our consultant came up with is not feasible, besides saying that we can't or we won't do it or we're not doing it, we want to understand why, so that we understand that the option that you're presenting to us is truly the only option we should be considering. I mean, I wouldn't want you to think that we don't understand the demand, and we understand the needs of the people who work there. But I hope you'll understand our needs for protecting the open spaces in Dobbs Ferry for the rest of the 11,000 residents here. So that's what we just want that. And I'm sorry, I had hoped that that's what was coming today, or, last week. And so that the letter that we received was surprising. And so if we can still get that, that's what my hope would be. I
Any other
didn't
comments?
mean to make crickets.
Any other comments from any of the trustees?
I agree with Christie. I think she's made all the points perfectly clear, and I just want to second her statement.
I agree as well, that if this is a better alternative, it needs to be considered if it's more consistent with our vision plan.
I think I made myself clear that I think it's the preferred approach, is what was proposed by Mr. Jacquemart.
Trustee DeRozzi.
I agree with the rest of the trustees. I think that is just another alternative that we have that we definitely need to explore.
Okay. So in light of that, I'm going to adjourn it to July 14th, the public hearing, that date at 6:30. So thank you, everybody. Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Thank you.
Adjourn
Not the meeting, but the
public
hearing.
Trustee Sullivan, second. Trustee Nell. All in favor? Okay, this meeting is adjourned. This public hearing is adjourned.
And thank you, Mr. Jacquemart,
Wishful
for
thinking,
finding
Mr.
time.
Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Jackman. Okay, that brings us to the public hearing for the continuation of the public hearing for review of the application of 41 Cedar Street. Is there a motion to open this public hearing? Trustee Taylor, second. Trustee Patino, all in favor? Okay, this public hearing is open. I would like first to acknowledge a letter dated June 18th, 2020 from Linda Whitehood, head attorney representing the applicant. We also have to acknowledge a letter dated June 2020 from the arborist, Ward Pardee, who examined the property on behalf of Zion. I would also acknowledge the email from Tracy Barron, who's the chair of the Dobbs Ferry Affordable Housing Task Force, dated June 23rd, 2020, and acknowledge an email from Rob Barron, chair of the Dobbs Ferry Traffic Committee. As well, I understand that the applicant has changed and offered a new proposal regarding the site. So I see Ms. Whitehead is here. You can just very briefly summarize what those changes are.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for not adjourning the entire meeting. For the record,
tried.
Linda, excuse me?
I tried, but I couldn't do it.
For the record, Linda Whitehead with the firm of McCullough, Goldberger and Stout, representing Cedar Commons LLC. Just following up on the last meeting and the discussions that we had at that meeting, we have made some revisions as were discussed and submitted revised plans. I'm going to go through them. Suzanne or Christina Griffin will go through them quickly with the updated virtual reality presentation also. But in summary, we've added an additional affordable unit as discussed with your board at the last meeting. So we now have 16 units. There are 2 affordable studios, 1 affordable 2-bedroom, and 13 market rate 2-bedrooms. With this mix of units, the parking still meets the requirements. So as we discussed at the last meeting, your code gives you discretion to permit a fourth floor, setback, partial fourth floor, provided that the plan promotes affordability and diversibility and provides public benefits. So we are now providing one more affordable unit that is required. We've provided some different unit types for diversity. And as we discussed previously, there's a public benefit to allowing the fourth floor, and that it allows the parking to be moved up to the rear of the ground floor level, which significantly reduces excavation, site disturbance, and the construction time frame. We've also, in doing this, reduced the overall height of the building from what we showed you 2 weeks ago. The height's been, someone's got background noise, but the overall height of the building has been reduced by 4 feet 8 inches. So it's pretty significant as compared to what we showed you 2 weeks ago. The top of the fourth floor is now at a height of 46 feet 10 inches. So it would require a waiver for 1 foot 10 inches. Interestingly, this new building, as it turns out, is only less than 6 inches higher than the existing roof of the existing White House in the back. Just some other updates quickly. Our client did meet yesterday with representatives of Zion Church. It was, we think, a productive meeting. We are looking at some options to address their concerns, and another follow-up meeting to look at what we can come up with for those options is scheduled for next Thursday. So we feel that that relationship is now moving forward. We hope they agree that it was a productive meeting. We received the additional comments from your traffic consultant. Our consultants reviewed those and feels comfortable that they can all be addressed, and will be providing a response. I think I heard you say there was a correspondence from your traffic committee that we did not see. But we did get the correspondence from the traffic consultant. I believe that the arborist retained by the village was also out on the site today. And there's been some discussion with the arborist as well. So we think this is all good progress. We hope you agree that it's all good progress. Just, a final thought before I hand it over to the architects. In my mind, and I have to admit that I've lived in this area pretty much all my life, and I'm very familiar with this building. This is going to be a significant improvement over the existing. The existing is an odd configuration of the one-story brick building in the front with the large White House behind it. The one-story structure is actually non-conforming with your current zoning, which requires a 2-story minimum. And obviously none of it meets the goals of the vision plan. So we think this will be a significant improvement to the character of Cedar Street. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Christina Griffin. You'll recall that you had asked for some changes in the virtual reality to show some additional angles. We've also revised it to reflect the reduced height of the building. So we'll go through that quickly. We need to switch our screen sharing, I think.
I think we're waiting for the VR person to sign on. So maybe Christina will just go through the drawings first.
Yes, we can. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Christina Griffin. I'm principal of CGA Studio Architects, and we have come back to you with some revisions in response to your comments. What we have in front of you is our revised zoning data chart showing that we have changed the mix of units. We now have a total of 16 units and 3 affordable housing units. And we're going to show you how these are laid out roughly. And we still have the same general square footage of the building. This is I'd like to go to the garage plan. And also the 16, though we have 16 units, the 3 affordable are 2 studio apartments and 1 2-bedroom apartment. And then because of the different mix of units, we are still required, according to the parking regulations, to have 23 spaces. So the garage layout is the same as before. And as Linda mentioned, we're looking at this scheme because it has the benefit of having the parking on the first floor level, avoids a lot of construction time, excavation, and disruption of the downtown. So our garage and first floor layout has stayed the same. The retail space is still 1,400 square feet. Next slide, please. On the second floor is where we've reconfigured this layout of the units so that we have now 7 units on this level and 2 studio affordable housing units, 5 market rate units. And on the third floor, we have 1 2-bedroom affordable housing unit. We did this in response to the request to take a look at adding diversity to the mix of units and increasing the affordable housing units. On the next slide, we're showing our 4th floor, which has stayed the same, and then our new roof plan, which is only slightly different because we are showing our air conditioning units as requested and a screening of those units. You see all these multiple air condensing units surrounded by fencing. We're keeping the same common roof deck on the north end. We have 4 private decks and a green roof on the southern end of the building. Another change we made in response to the request to reduce the height of the building, we have lowered the top of roof at the 4th floor to 46 feet 10. Our goal was to try to get it down to the 45 feet required for a 4-story building. And we weren't able to quite get it down, and it's simply because we wanted to maintain a 12-foot height of the ceiling at the retail level. Previously it was 14 feet. And you know, a high ceiling in the retail space is very common throughout the downtown. So we wanted to keep that height and keep nice proportions for the building. So we lowered this as much as we could, and we also had to consider how the building fit into the site. So on the next slide, you're going to see the west elevation. This is the elevation that is facing Zion Church, and we've lowered the top of the building to 46 feet 10 by reducing the storefront height, and also we reduced the height of the garage to 9 feet. But any more reduction in height would increase the retaining wall in the back of the property, which we were trying to avoid. In all other respects, the design is the same fenestration, same treatment of railings, same 37'6" setback from the front of the building. Next slide, please. This is our rear elevation, and by reducing the height of the building by 4 feet 8, we were able to now see about 2 stories of the building above the grade at the south property line. So where Suzanne just put her cursor is the dashed line that is the top of that retaining wall. So when you're looking at the building from the South Presbyterian Church, you will see about 2 stories. Next slide. This is our east elevation. This is the side of the building that is facing the old theater building, and this angled shape is the profile of that building. And you can see that the top of the 4th floor is about 6 feet above that, the top of that roof. Next slide. Our streetscapes have changed. This is the But on top is the existing streetscape that we showed you before, showing the existing buildings. 4345 has the old house behind the one-story storefront currently, and down below is our proposed building, showing a 3-story building with a 4th floor setback from that facade. The top of the 4th floor is just slightly above the tower sign for the theater building. Next slide, please.
I think that's the last slide. And actually, I think Sina's here to
Excellent.
show the VR.
We'd like to take you through briefly the new virtual reality. It will give you a nice sense of how the building now looks from the a pedestrian's viewpoint. We're starting here on the east end of the street, walking towards the new building. You see the theater building on the left, the sign, the tower sign, or skeletal tower. And then this is our new facade. It is very similar in design, except we've lowered the top of the roof of that facade, and the storefront has been lowered by 2 feet. We're going to continue, and this is our.
I just wanted to add that our previous storefront was 16 feet. Now we're down to 12. So that's.
Oh, so sorry.
Yeah, just.
Oh, okay. So we have lowered it by 4 feet. As we're going around the building now, so you can see the view looking back at the building. And we're going to take you up the driveway at Zion Church, up to the top of the hill, and then turn around to look back at the building. Okay. This is a simulated view of our new scheme, showing the 4th floor, which is set back on this view from the front, 37 feet 6, and I think about 10 feet from the west facade. And do we have a view higher up on the hill there, looking back? I think, okay. Please. Okay. This is a simulation of the trees on the property. It's not an exact depiction of them. And this is an idea of what the building would look like as you're walking down the driveway.
Christina, why does the view seems to be so much in the ground? When we were coming from the south end of Cedar Street, it appears that we are walking like literally on the sidewalk. I cannot appreciate the height of the building from the level that I'm seeing it.
On the south side, we can take you.
It doesn't look at eye level.
We can try again.
No, I think we were trying for eye level, but we can try again.
Trying, but let's try again. If Seema could try to get.
I'm trying to build a comparison from the height of the building compared to the theater next to it.
Okay, let's see if we can get you those views so that you can see that comparison. I would go up, yes. And maybe, Seema, if you could just look at the 2 buildings side by side, trying to get at a person's eye, for the point of view of a person walking on the sidewalk. I think you have to go down a little bit more because we're looking down at the cars. Please. Yeah. Okay, that's better.
You know, you don't really see the fourth story from the sidewalk.
Yes. We chose a very deep setback of 37 feet thick in order to try to make sure that it was not visible from a person's eye view, point of view of walking on the street. It's interesting, but the theater has the same idea where you hardly see the top of that big roof because it's set back.
Do we have a view coming down from Main Street of Cedar?
We can take you down Cedar towards Main, Sina, continue west. I'm gonna go down there, try to simulate somebody walking down the street, and then we're gonna turn around and walk the other way. Okay, so now we're probably just below the church, the church building, and we're going to walk slowly towards the new building. We've kept the pocket park as we had before. And the pillar on the right is actually the existing pillar, that stone pillar, right on the property line. This should be from the point of view of a pedestrian walking down the street. This is someone walking backwards.
Gonna make us dizzy. Are there any other views that anybody wants to see? You walked into that person.
Yes, let us know if you have any other views we could show you. If not, I'd like to just give this back to Linda to sum up, and I'll be here if you have any questions.
Yeah, I think, you know, we're happy to answer any questions that the board may have and hear from the public and see where we are after we hear your comments and hear from the public.
Okay, I'll go. Thank you so much for addressing everybody's concerns and for all the extra work that you're doing. It is really, really appreciated. I truly believe that you are trying to create the best building that you can. My only exception to that is the affordable housing units. You really should look at our code, at our law, because according to that, the requirements are 2 affordable housing units, and also according to the law, which is based on the Westchester County Model Ordinance for affordable housing, those apartments need to be comparable to the apartments being offered at market rate. By offering 2 studio units, essentially you are not giving us the additional affordable housing units that are required. If you look at the requirements and restrictions on the amount of people who can live in units, the minimum and maximum for an efficiency unit studio is 1 person per unit. In a 2-bedroom unit, it's a minimum of 2 people, a maximum of 5 people. So essentially, you are not giving us more living space for people who need affordable housing. So that would be my issue, is that we need a minimum of 2 2-bedroom units, in my opinion. And the additional unit, to truly be an additional unit, should we, I mean, I would love to have another 2-bedroom, but I understand your finances, et cetera. A 2 or at minimum 1, but minimally, I believe you need to have at least 2 2-bedroom affordable housing units to meet our code requirement.
We have looked at that, and we do have some alternative schemes. We were trying to comply with the parking, frankly.
We can work on that.
We do have a scheme that has 2 affordable 2-bedrooms. And I think it has 1 affordable efficiency. And then I think one of our other 2-bedrooms, market 2-bedrooms, turns into a 1-bedroom. So we can do that. We can do the 2 2-bedrooms and 1 efficiency affordable. But we end up needing a waiver for either a quarter or a half of a parking space, which is really 1 space. But we can certainly do that.
Do you also need a waiver for the retail parking? Is that what I understand?
We have included the retail parking because we have 26 spaces. So we have 23 plus 3.
Okay.
The retail requires 3. So we have included the retail in our count. You can only do a waiver on the retail, I believe, if it's under 1,000 feet.
You've included the retail on the street.
Right, we have the 3 spaces on the street for the retail.
Which is at the discretion of the board, just to be clear.
Okay, so we're showing 23 spaces in the garage and then 3 retail spaces on the street, which again, you know, having anything in the garage is better than what exists there today. You have more retail there today with no spaces except what's on the street. So this is, Suzanne, this is the alternative that showed, just showing the parking. Okay.
Yeah,
but yes, if we can show 2 affordable 2-bedrooms and then 1 efficiency, and then mix up the unit count, but we will be a half a parking space short. But we can certainly make that change.
So to just be clear, advise the board, at change, you would be waiving the 1 space on site for residential parking. You'll be recognizing at your discretion the 3 spaces on the street for the retail. You'd be giving a waiver of 1 foot 10 inches on the height of the building, and also a waiver of the 10-foot setback for exposed parking on the rear line and 1 space on the left side rear.
So we weren't going to bring it up tonight because we're looking at it, but we have an alternative that may eliminate the 10-foot parking setback. It's something that, Ed, we were going to show you that actually covers that so that it technically becomes below grade, but it's going to be, you're going to have to look at it and see and interpret if that meets the requirement as now being below grade, not exposed, and not requiring the setback.
And if we grant the waiver for the spaces, do we get the payment in lieu of parking fee?
You can ask for that.
And
That's
another
part of the
question.
code.
Another
And
question.
I think, and I'm my client's on, so I don't necessarily need to speak for him, but I think that for the 1 space, he would be willing to pay that.
Agreed.
Ed, I may have missed it on the list of things, but isn't there also a height waiver?
Yes, I did mention the building
And the
height.
4th story would be at the
You need a waiver.
discretion.
So the 4th story is at your discretion, and you know, it seems the board was prone to that. They're giving you the extra affordable unit for that, and so at your discretion, when you go to the 4th, you're allowed to go 45 feet, and they're at 4610. So you would be also granting a waiver of 1 foot 10 inches in height.
And we're allowed to grant that waiver, right? It doesn't have to go to the ZBA?
Yes.
So Ed, if we decided to go with the fourth story, would this have to go back to the planning board or the AHRB for review?
Only if you feel that you need to do that. I mean, the appearance of the building hasn't changed much. I would refer to Michael on that opinion.
I would say that you'd have to go to the planning and architecture review. I think that there are parts of this building that haven't substantially changed, but I think that you know, and that has to do with some of the detailing. And I think in those respects, a lot of that will be quite easy at the AHRB. But I just think that given the change in massing and the change in the number of floors, that it's important for us to rely on the boards that look specifically at massing, planning, and architecture, and have them weigh in.
I agree with Michael on that.
Me too.
I'm okay with that, but I also think that if we're gonna do that, is there a way to do it where it's like a joint meeting, or even where like the board of trustees is there too, to make it more efficient for the applicant?
I just want to point out to the board that this alternative was presented to the planning board, and they weren't in favor of this alternative. So why would we go back to the planning board and present something that they were not in favor of?
Again, your board makes the ultimate decision. They make a recommendation to you.
I think that the planning board, though, was not in favor of that because it requires our discretion to allow the fourth story, not they were per se against a fourth story in general. And I don't know that anyone was talking about sending it back for them to overrule our discretion on a fourth story. If we decide we want the fourth story, it's our discretion, but then get their input on the final building, since they haven't seen it and they are our experts.
Right.
So the design of the
before we-
building, I think, incorporates all of the AHRB comments. And the AHRB actually does mention the possibility of the fourth floor because they were concerned about the parking under and the excavation and the disturbance to that. But ultimately, it's up to your board.
Plan that you showed to the planning board, did it have the 35-foot setback?
Yes.
I'm not even sure how the majority of the Board of Trustees feel about the fourth story. So I don't want to go, jump ahead of that. So I think that's a decision we have to, among us, we have to reach that consensus if we feel that we should go with the path of the fourth story or go the path of the plan that's been approved, the three-story. And I think we also need the reports, the reports from the Mesa consulting questions to be answered. And we also need the arborist reports to move forward. And I don't think those reports necessarily change if we go from 3 stories to 4 story. I'm going to now, adjourn it to the July 14th hearing, and then we
I
can.
think there are people who want to speak though.
Yes, well, but I just want, that's what I think my plan is on this, so.
Mayor, it might be useful for you to get the board's feelings and
Consensus.
thoughts about the fourth story.
Right, so I was wondering if we could just stop sharing the screen so I can.
See everybody?
Thank you. So, Donna, how do you feel about the fourth story, the third story?
I'm okay with either. Essentially, I'm not generally in favor of a fourth story, but in this instance, it will help with the downtown with less disturbance, the shorter amount of time that the construction will take, which will have less impact on our downtown businesses. They are giving us the additional affordable housing unit. So I would be okay with it.
Trustee Taylor, how do you feel about it?
I would be, I think, okay with a fourth story, subject to having a little bit better understanding of, how this would look from the various angles. And I'm encouraged that the applicant is working more closely with the Zion Church, who may very well feel that they're the most affected by an additional story. But it appears to have been done in a way that wouldn't be all that intrusive. And as Donna observed, there's some benefits to the town, including the additional affordable housing unit. So I would give it strong consideration.
Trustee Sullivan?
I agree with what Larry and Donna said, but I think if we have a consensus of the board that wants to or is willing to consider the fourth story, that the next meeting should be, even if it's a special meeting, a joint meeting of all three boards, so that we could get it going faster and move forward one way or the other, rather than come back to us and then do another meeting in August or something like that. That would be my suggestion.
Okay. Trustee Now?
I am not in favor of entertaining a fourth story. I think that sets a bad precedent for the future of the downtown of Dobbs Ferry. The fourth story is something that should be used only in very, very specific situations where it is greatly impacting the village to add diversity, and that's what the code explains. And if this one has a fourth story, it's just going to continue down Cedar, and it's already going from a one-story front to a three-story front. It's going to have a large massing, and now we're setting the stage to have 4 stories being considered in the future. And that's a big difference in Cedar Street, and I don't think that we should be considering it at all. So,
Trustee DeRozzi?
I have a few concerns in terms of the massive of the building and the height now. However, I agree with the other board, with the other trustee members. I do want to see what the input of the boards is in terms of the massive. As Mike Patino explained, I think that their input and expertise will be very, very influential of how I feel about the 4th floor.
Okay, and Trustee Patino?
I think that the 4th floor trade-off for the additional affordable unit and the impact on the disruption of the village is worth the consideration on our board's part for that. And I do share some of Christie's concerns, but I think that there is a good case being made here for the validity of it. I also agree with Cole. We should arrange a joint meeting and try to work through this fairly quickly.
Okay.
Question for the applicant, I suppose, is this a path that they would like to entertain? They would have to discuss this with the planning and architecture review. Where's the applicant's stance on this?
We're willing to go that route. We would appreciate if it could be done, quickly and efficiently, like with the joint meeting. Think that would be helpful. But we do believe it's a better plan with benefits to the village. So.
Yeah, well, I'm usually against the 4th story, and I do think there's a high standard to meet, but I do think that the affordable housing unit, the additional affordable housing unit makes a big difference for me. And,
I just want to be clear. Oh, sorry, Vinny, I thought you were done.
no, and the parking lot, all that construction, I think it would save a lot of time and make it more palatable for the people who are driving and walking by the other businesses. It'll be less restrictive on their business. So I'm willing to go forward and explore this. But obviously, I think we should speak up and see what we can see where we come out on this. Wanted to say something, Nicole?
Yeah, I apologize, Mayor. I just wanted to make sure that I'm clear that when we're talking about affordable units, we're talking about what was shown tonight, the two bedrooms and a 1-bedroom, correct?
Yes. Yeah, or it might be 2 bedrooms and an efficiency, but it will definitely be 2 bedrooms.
Okay.
I think there's another thing to point out, which is valuable in that this, I believe this building as it's been presented is a more attractive building. I think there's also, they also are better units with more outdoor space for the residents, future residents. So there's a quality of life issue for future. I think there's a lot of benefits to this building that shouldn't, I don't think we should overlook.
Okay, I know there are people from the public here, so is there anyone raising their hand, Jennifer?
Yes, we have one right now.
The trustee wanted to say something.
Leslie, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm Leslie Walter, 40 Clinton Avenue. Good evening. Basically, 15, 16 more families, 20 more cars, and a trendy commercial space does mean more congestion. And who wants congestion? But more Cedar Street traffic is, in the end, I think, so much more nuisance. I want to address two questions about Providence traffic report. They are about on-street parking next to their driveway and their delivery and loading zone. And one of these questions is, I think, a big safety issue. First, a comment. Liz Draper was kind enough to send me the comments by Mazer Consulting, retained by the village, about Providence traffic report. Mazer had 9 questions. Mazer labeled their letter a prelim review. Their last sentence says, once we receive information we're asking for, we will provide the village with our recommendations. The problem is Liz could not find more letters from Mazer after that one of August 2019. So, as far as I know, Providence traffic report was never, once and for all, vetted or cleared by Mazer Consulting for the village. So, more traffic congestion may not be a big deal, but Mazer brings up, I think, a big liability issue. They call it on-street parking. Mazer says, our cursory review suggests that at least one of the 3 on-street parking spaces should be eliminated. Why? To allow adequate sight distances for vehicles exiting the new site driveway. This is surely a comment about safety. Doesn't poor sight distance mean more car and pedestrian accidents? As a walker and a driver downtown, I mean, even I know that. My question is, was this new driveway sight distance problem ever addressed to Mazer's satisfaction? Mazer did request something called a sightline drawing. I'm just not sure that that was ever provided in Providence Attachment B answer. I'm no expert. I want to know what Mazer thought of Providence Attachment B answer. In sum, I think this poor sightlines problem is worth the village taking another look at. Lastly, the issue of a delivery zone. Now that was interesting. Providence says delivery and loading will be in the designated loading zone already provided on Cedar. Well, I think that's double parking. There happen to be 2 driveways on either side of that double parking loading zone and another driveway catty corner on the other side of the street. So deliveries will happen while double parked and right between 2 driveways where there are also 3 parking spaces. So my question for this is, when cars are exiting both or 3 driveways with a delivery van double parked, does that create another sightline problem? Or even if just one car comes out of one driveway with a truck next to the driveway, is that a sightline problem? It'd be great if Mazer could offer an opinion on this as well. Thank you to the board for hearing me out and to Liz Draper for her help.
Sure, Mayor, can I just address that quickly?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that was the August Mazer letter that she was referring to or the one that was received yesterday. Since the August letter, Provident provided responses. We received Mazer's comments on the responses yesterday, and we've already indicated that we will be responding to those. Again, we just received them yesterday. We will be responding to it. So, you know, everything will be addressed. Everything that Mazer has requested will be provided. Our consultants have already reviewed it and believe they can address all the issues. And so since we're going over another meeting anyway, we, you know, hopefully we can get them the responses and you can have something final from Mazer by your next meeting. But we certainly, our consultant feels that everything can be addressed. There's also loading at this building currently today. In fact, there's much more retail use and loading use today than there will be with the new smaller retail space.
Where is the loading today?
They load somewhere.
I believe it's double parking.
Like everywhere else on Cedar.
I think actually in Mazur's letter yesterday, they indicated they were satisfied with the response on the loading.
Okay. Jennifer, is there anybody else?
I did have a question on the safety of the driveway. So I don't think it matters if it's ends up being 3 or 4 story, but is there gonna be like some sound or something or some indicator for pedestrians walking that there's a car coming out of the garage?
Christina, do you want to address that? You have to unmute.
We have been discussing that. There are electronic devices that can give people a sound and a light or some way of indicating that there is traffic coming up the driveway and down the driveway. So we are looking into that kind of device for this building. Were you able to hear me?
Yeah. So whose responsibility is that? Sorry, whose responsibility is it to to really confirm what that alarm or alert is that there would be a car coming? Is it the architect or is it the applicant or?
It's the traffic study engineers, Provident Engineering will work with the architect and probably the mechanical engineers as well. They will spec it out and the mechanical engineers will provide electric to it and things of that nature, and the architect will make sure it look nice. So
We would get that. Is that part of any of this discussion, Ed? Like, is there a way that we can know what that is before we're moving forward?
It's very simply, you could add that requirement to your resolution.
Right.
And just say that, there will be an audible alarm for exiting vehicles to the satisfaction of the building department.
Okay, thank you.
We have 2 people with their hands up.
Okay.
Niall, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Yeah, I'm Niall Kane. I'm the junior warden at Zion Church. We did have a productive meeting with Cosmo, the developer, on the site, which was fruitful. There was something that we said to him that I think we thought, we really should share to the board as well to maybe better understand our position. And, that we refer to the grounds and the buildings of Zion Church as the church close. And the term close comes from, it's a bit of an antiquated term, but it speaks to the enclosure around the church. And the church enclosure has always been one of sort of contemplative enclosure or has a spiritual quality. And the trees are part of that. And they don't necessarily have to be, special trees or important trees, grand oaks and so forth. There's a lot of trees that screen the entire church from the aqueduct / parking lot that are not necessarily significant, but this is very important, and as vestry members and as wardens, we are stewards of the church, and we kind of hope that, and we know, I shouldn't say hope, that Dobbs Ferry shares in that stewardship of the church. And, I'd like to think when we talked to Cosmo that he sort of acknowledged that, he understood. And as I said, we had a fruitful discussion. We submitted an arborist. We hired our own arborist because we felt it was important not just to have an arborist review Save a Trees report, but actually come out and do another report. You saw I assume you read it, or I hope you read it, read it after this meeting if you haven't. He pointed out that the retaining wall as designed will kill a significant maple tree on the property. And the Save a Tree, he also stated that this is an old tree, but it's still an important enough tree to preserve. And it provides generous screening. I mean, please would welcome you all once again to drive, walk or drive around, but come all the way around the close and look at how all that screening provides the sort of sanctuary feel of the church. The other, and we also, if you read his report, he says here he strongly recommends having an arborist come and value the tree. And we've done that. We have Scott Cullen, who's a registered consulting arborist, I guess one step above the, the guy's level of arborist. And he came up with a mallet, he hit the tree, he did a thorough analysis of it, and he concurred that it is certainly a tree worth preserving. That does mean that that retaining wall has to go back 6 feet more than it is currently in order to ensure saving this tree. And when we talked to Cosmo, we talked about pulling that retaining wall all the way back to the garage foundation wall so that they are concurrent with one another. And that would provide screening. The other part of that is that the utility line, the sewer line would have to be moved back as well, because we don't want a situation where, yes, the wall moves back, the utility is still there, and we still have the same issue all over again. There's no reason why a sewer line can't be mounted to the inside of the garage wall. It provides access to it, easy access, it's seen, it's not an unusual thing to do, certainly in urban settings, and this is in we're dense suburban settings. That certainly is a possibility that should be investigated, getting those lines back, getting the wall back. The other thing in his report is he said you really don't have enough land in this strip of land between the retaining wall and the driveway to plant anything significant. The renderings, and I have to say that both arborists concur that we had snaps of the renderings as you see them from Zion Church. They are not accurate. We do not have the amount of land that would support the trees that are shown in that rendering. And both of these experts said that that was the case, and it is the case. And if you come out and look, you can see for yourself that that is the case. I don't want to, we did have it, the discussions with the developer, like I said, was productive, pulling that wall, but that retaining wall back. There's a portion where they can't do it, at the end of that little part where it's not practical. So we could have lower screening there for about maybe a third way up, and then significant screening for the rest of the way up. And we hope that we will, we'll see something to that effect when we meet again Thursday, just before July 4th weekend. There is, in this presentation we just saw, there was talk of having the 4th floor setback from the street 35 feet, which is great, but the entire building is exposed along Zion. And when you come down, and one of the trustees mentioned specifically what happens when you come down from Main down Cedar towards, Stop and Shop. You see that entire building, and it seems to me the notion that when there's a vision plan about having 4th floors and allowing them with the setback, that setback is to disguise that 4th floor. And in the suburban downtown setting, they call it urban, but this downtown setting, you would envision having buildings right up against one another or with small gaps. So you don't see that 4th story. And that's an important consideration, because this is not a typical site for that additional 4th floor. When you come up to the library and see the building across from the library with that 4th floor metal box on top, my personal opinion is it is not ideal, I guess. And why can't another affordable, we love the idea of affordable units in Dobbs Ferry. I mean, I do, and I think everyone in the vestry does. But you can put another affordable unit in the 3 stories. That should be considered. It shouldn't be, we need this 4th floor in order to have that one affordable unit. It shouldn't be driving both on the 4th floor. Yeah, I mean, I think that's about it. The only, we've agreed to meet. I would just point out one little thing that seemed just, and I know this wasn't said intentionally to intentionally give this impression, but I just wanted to clarify that, there were never any emails or phone calls that we were ignoring in order to meet the developer. It's just the coronavirus, big span of time, conferring with South Presbyterian, coming up to speed on a lot of things that were missed when this was before the planning board was important. And yes, it took longer than it should have, certainly. But it was no intention on anyone at Zion's part to sort of ignore any overtures to meet, certainly. And Cosmo was a great guy, nice guy. We had a great meeting. But I hope you take these things into consideration when you review this further down the road. And I think that's about all we have to say, or I have to say on behalf of Zion.
I know we have two other people who like to comment. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Jen, who's next?
Rob, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, can you also state your name for the record?
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Robert Barron. I'm here for two. I'd like to make 2 comments. So Vinny, I'm sorry, Mayor, if I can have an extra minute or so, because if I don't say the first comment, my wife will kill me. Because that's she's the chair of the Affordable Housing Task Force, and she's on the Board of Education meeting. So if that's okay. So the first is I just want to, I listened and I appreciate Donna's comments about the affordable housing and, referring to section 300-40 of the Village Code, that having two bedroom units as sort of the base case for this development is very important. The addition, I think it would be, is sort of what we would love to see as well. I know that the applicant mentioned having one efficiency. If we give one, 2 efficiencies or one bedroom, that would be great in exchange, with the addition of the 4th floor. We think that would be, and waiving the parking requirement for that additional unit would be fine with the Affordable Housing Task Force. So that's the Affordable Housing Task Force. Now I'm going to make a second comment as the Traffic Committee, as the chair of the Traffic Committee. I do want to call the board's attention and also to the applicant. I know the applicant didn't get this, to the Westchester Planning Board's referral review dated February 14th on page 2 under the second paragraph under parking provisions. The planning board recommended unbundling parking from the cost of the unit. And just to explain what unbundling is, if you go to a restaurant and you go and you want to order dinner, you say, all I want is the entree. And they say, well, sorry, you have to have the dessert as well. And you say, I don't want the dessert. I just want the entree. In this example, the entree is the apartment and the dessert is the parking space. Okay, so what we're trying to do is separate the two, and so that somebody can buy a condo in this unit, and every year can have the right of first refusal to rent a parking space for the year. The benefit of this is that our hope is that not everybody will bring a car or two, and that many people will use mass transit. And the Traffic Committee memo has sort of a procedure and a methodology explaining how this would work. Throughout the region, most buildings operate like this, where you get a parking space separate from the apartment that you are renting or buying. So we are, asking that the board ask the applicant to do this, to try to, this, and the other public benefit of this is that any parking spaces that aren't used by the people who live in the building, which would be great, could then be used to many of the people in our community who don't have access to off-street parking spaces. And we think this is a very desirable thing that other people who live on Cedar or Main might want, because these are covered parking spaces for the most part. You don't have to shovel them. They're protected from the elements. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. We have one more person.
One more person. Michael, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Okay.
Yes, we could hear you.
Yes, I'll be brief. I just want to point out, okay. I just want to point out in regard to.
Name and your address.
Sure, Michael Sabatino, 10 Belmont Place, Yonkers. I'm the former senior warden at Zion and a parishioner. The regard to the driveway and sending a signal by sound, I think you should also consider a light as well, because you may have someone who is hard of hearing that may not hear an audible sound. And I am very concerned about site views. As you know, we have a problem at Zion on our site view from our driveway. I hope that you are still planning on blocking that one spot with a motorcycle, instead of a car, because we've had many problems where people park there and we have no site view. That's really all I have to say. I think Niall did everything I would have said. And thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone's comments. So I think the next step would be to adjourn this to the July 14th hearing. We'll have a public hearing on July 14th, 6:30, and then we can have the comment from the traffic and the arborist to review, and maybe we can also see the plans for the other affordable housing units. And then in the meantime, if we can schedule we can maybe schedule a meeting with the other boards as well to see if we can move this along. So I want to thank everybody for their efforts and their time. Is there a motion to close this public hearing?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to clarify. So are you referring it back to the other boards, or are you trying to get a joint meeting together?
We'll try to do a joint meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
And it's a motion to adjourn, not close. Motion to adjourn
Motion to adjourn this
the
meeting.
hearing.
I keep saying.
I like
He's
to
trying to
close.
close
I like
the-
to close better.
So do we, but
Yeah.
Trustee Taylor, is there a second? Trustee Patino, all in favor? Okay, so moved. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to courtesy of the floor. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on any particular matter? And if so, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Is there anybody, Jen?
Yes, we have one right now. Lee, can you hear us?
Yes.
Please
you hear me?
state your name and your address.
Hi, Lee Constantine, right in the middle of Rivertown Square. I have a question about the ARB last night indicated that there was going to be a walkthrough they referred to it as next Friday, and there was no time given. So I was wondering if anyone knows. I did raise my hand last night, but I wasn't acknowledged because I know it was more appropriate to ask then, but I figured, okay, it's my only choice to ask now. So does anybody know when that is, which Friday they're indicating? And if so, what time?
I don't know. Does anybody know?
I don't know.
But I don't remember.
What property are you talking about?
Rivertown Square, the AHRB is going to do a walkthrough with the applicant.
Okay, we'll try and find that out for you.
Okay, and then how can I follow up to find out?
You could email Dan Romer, dromer@dosferry.com.
Okay,
He's the liaison to the Architectural Review Board.
okay, will do.
Thank
Dan
you.
Romer at dobbsferry.com.
DROEMER@dosferry.com.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Lynn. Is there anybody else, Jen?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Let's move to matters requiring action. Agenda item number 1 is to consider a motion to approve audits numbers 3 and 4 for June 2020 as recommended by the village treasurer. Jeff, do you have any thing you want to add to that?
No, unless there's questions.
Are there any questions? Okay. Is there a motion to approve audits 3 and 4? Trustee Taylor, second. Trustee Patino, all in favor? Okay, and that passes unanimously. Agenda item number 2 is to consider a motion to transfer funds for COVID-19 related computer purchase as recommended by the village treasurer. I know, Jeff, you submitted a memo dated June 16, 2020, laying out the details of this situation. From what I can see, it's for the amount of $12,568.32 to buy laptops and computer supplies that were necessary as a result of people being forced to work from outside of the office. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is there anything else you want to shed on this? Any other light you'd like to shed on this?
This is also for the future. It gives the opportunity in case we have another wave that people can work from home, employees can work from home. It was very successful, but not everyone had one. And we're just trying to make sure that we can have a full staff working.
And also of note is that we needed to upgrade computers anyway because Microsoft no longer supports Windows 7, which is the computer towers that we had. So we are killing two birds with one stone here.
Okay, that makes sense. Windows 7, wow. Okay. Is there a motion? Deputy Mayor Cassell, is there a second? Trustee DeRozzi, all in favor? Okay, and that passes. I don't hear Nicole. Is she there? Or see Nicole?
There's a photo of her there.
I'm here. I was just having video issues, but I'm here.
Okay, so did you vote for that?
Yes, I voted for it.
Okay. Action item number 3 is to consider a motion, and I'm going to butcher this name, and I hope he forgives me, to add Mr. John Luzon and Philip Vogiatoglu as a member of the Livingston Hose Company and to have their names placed into the active insurance rolls. We have letters from the Secretary of the Dahlsbury Fire Department dated June 15th, 2020. Is there a motion? Trustee Taylor, is there a second? Trustee Patino, any discussion? All in favor? And that passes. Nicole, are you voting yes?
I fixed it. I'm here.
And we don't see you, but okay. There you are.
Yeah, you see.
Oh, I voted yes.
Now we see you. Action item number 4 is to consider a resolution setting a public hearing for intro local law 4-2020 to amend the eligibility for existing senior and disabled citizen rent abatement programs. I don't know if Jeff or if Donna, you could speak to this.
Yeah, okay. This is a program for seniors over the age of 62 and disabled people who live in rent-controlled, rent-stabilized apartments and who pay more than 1/3 of their income in rent. What this does is freezes their rent, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but the landlord gets a tax incentive from their property taxes. There's a maximum income level, which was set in Dobbs-Ferry back in 2009 at $29,000. Most of the surrounding villages and towns are closer to $50,000 as a maximum income. The median income in Dobbs-Ferry is $126,000. Half of that, $60,000+. So anyone who would qualify this would be way below the 50% mark. So I think it's time that this happens. I don't believe there will be that many people. I don't have the numbers in front of me now. I can get them for you. How many rent-controlled and rent-stabilized units we even have in Dobbs-Ferry. But for those on a fixed income who are below that level or who are disabled and below that level, I think this is a huge benefit for them. And we should have done this a while ago. I believe we're going to be phasing it in. I don't know if we've settled on the numbers yet. We may phase it in over a 3 or 4 year period so that we don't get hit right away with property tax cuts. So that's what the hearing will be about.
Jeff, you'll be able to provide us information as to how much of a hit the budget would take for implementation of this?
Yeah, I mean, we can we'll take a look at it. We have started to take a look. It's, you know, it's like Donna said, it's hard to know the number of people that this would affect, but we can try to get that information.
Okay.
And I've drafted the law as a 3-year phase-in up to 50. It'll phase in from the 29 to 50 over a 3-year period. That's how I've drafted it. But again, it's open for discussion. This board makes the ultimate decision whether they want to do it over 2 years, they want to do it all at once. It'll be based on the information Jeff can provide to us.
Okay, so is there a motion to conduct a public hearing on July 14th, 2020 at 6:30 to discuss and review and possibly pass the introductory local law 4-2020? Deputy Mayor Casal, second. Trustee Patino, all in favor? I don't see everybody raising their hand, so I'm assuming that everyone's passing. This is unanimous. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Action number 5 is to consider a resolution to authorize a pilot program to offer licenses for on-street parking space as parklets to be used by adjacent restaurant owners as additional space for outdoor dining, and to set July 5th as the next street closure along Cedar and Main Streets for the safe use by residents and local businesses. At the outset, I just want to clarify that that street opening will not happen on July 5th. It will happen this Saturday on June 27th, which will accommodate or coincide with the high school graduation. So that gives the to walk down the streets with the graduates informally and shop or be at the restaurant. So that's why we're going to change the dates. Also, we can have a discussion on this. I think
I provided an updated resolution to your clerk. So she has an updated resolution indicating the correct date, and also to be sure that it's clear that the intention is to offer this program, pilot program, to all the businesses and not limit it just to the restaurant.
Lorelei, are you talking about the pilot program for the parklets, not for the street closing, correct?
It's in a single resolution. It's in your packet as a single resolution. So I have updated that resolution and the clerk has a copy of it.
So in our resolution that we have in our backup, we refer to a fee of $400 per month per space for the businesses who are interested in this pilot parklet program. But I'd like to propose that we reduce that to $250 per month per space, and in an effort to try and make the program more successful for the businesses and have a greater impact on their success over the summer as they try and recoup the losses that they've had over the last 3 months, because 400 might just be too steep. So hopefully we can consider reducing that to 250. And yeah.
so. I know we had a discussion and we had a meeting last week where we heard from people and we discussed the issue, and we had decided that $400 per space would be appropriate. And I know that we have 5 restaurants have indicated that they're interested in it at that price. But certainly we have heard from other restaurants, and we've heard that it may be, too much even for at that rate. So I know I'm certainly open to discussing a reduction in the amount of the monthly fee that we would charge. So,
I would add in addition to that, that we would try and recoup the costs over time so that this isn't a burden on the taxpayers, that there's additional parklet programs that we could potentially do next year when it's not an emergency, and charge slightly more appropriate or higher fee, because then it wouldn't be an emergency procedure. It would just be a service that we're providing. We could also try and sell the barriers after we're done with them if we don't need that many. I would hope that we could find ways to recoup the cost over time in an effort to try and keep the restaurants that we have in business downtown, because I believe that's very important to our residents.
well, clearly the restaurants and all the shops and stores and commercial are important to us in Dobbs Ferry. And no matter what the fee is, we were going to take a loss on it as well. But one of the problems that we also are faced with is the parking spaces that we will be losing. And I think one of the things that I'm interested in doing, and I know the rest of the board is interested in doing, is having the store owners and their staff park in another place, preferably 99 Cedar Street, because that would free up parking spots, not only for their businesses, but for the other businesses and the shoppers as well. So I think that's important to all of us as well as doing that. It's, you know, is $250 per spot, per space appropriate? I don't know how everyone feels about that.
And before you go into that, Elisa, can you just go through again what the expenses are so that we're clear where the tax dollars are going, just so that the public understands.
Well, I know
Okay,
you did a
so-
very detailed PowerPoint last time. I don't know if you have that available.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me right now, but I can briefly tell you that the barriers are approximately $310 each. And just to repeat, what we said last time was that we actually, it's a cheap option, meaning we could have chosen more expensive options that would take longer and be not as safe. And we chose the cheapest possible thing that we could find. And we did a lot of research to find other alternatives, including rental possibilities and others, just to bring the cost down. So each barrier is a cost. We also estimated the lost parking revenue, as well as labor installation. And so for the average parking space, with all costs, it was approximately $3,300 per space. For one space. There was a graded degree. It wasn't, so I think 3 spaces was about 5,500. So it wasn't 3,300 times 3, you know. But,
And does that include the shipping costs? I know we're paying shipping for those barriers to be shipped to Dobbs Ferry, correct?
we need the shipping. Is Jen Dorman might have more information about that.
That shipping cost was not included in that estimate. So shipping.
It's not through
is-
Amazon Prime.
Depending on, I think my numbers that I had taken notes on, Elisa, from your presentation the other day, was that the cost would range depending on the configuration and how many were together, between a little over 2,500 a parking space to a little over 3,200 a parking space. It'll be an estimate, but it's not an insignificant cost, but one that, you know, the village really, I've come to the conclusion, really needs to help our downtown businesses that have been in survival mode. And while it is, you know, we take seriously the fact that we have to spend this money, it should really help, we believe, revive the downtown, all the businesses, not just the restaurants, in terms of creating traffic and energy. And the other thing to keep in mind is, as our residents are going back out to eat and enjoy their restaurants, there's a lot of evidence that suggests they're safer being outside than inside. And so the more that we can encourage people to dine outdoors while the weather is good, the more we're also contributing to public health and safety.
Can we just, there's more to the expense than just the cost of the barriers, right? Like we're losing I just want the public and the business owners to fully understand, because it's important for us as the Board of Trustees that we represent all residents and all taxpayers and all businesses, like we have preferential treatment for anyone. There's benefits like Larry and Christy have explained to allowing more parklets and lowering the fee, but can we have the full spectrum? I mean, for each parking spot, we're losing the meters for that day. We have the cost of the barriers, we have the cost of installation, we have the cost of removal. Is there a cost associated with storage? I think that for people to really appreciate what the village is doing and the lengths we're willing to go to support our community residents and their pleasure and morale boosting things for outdoor and the restaurants and other businesses in the downtown, that would be helpful. So I don't know who the right person for that is, Jeff, Elisa.
That Elisa's numbers were including that. And the one that Larry was saying too.
Really?
Yeah, the numbers that I gave include, and they're estimates because we don't know exactly what it's going to cost. But they include everything except for that. I don't believe, maybe Jen, you could correct me, but do they include dismantling as well as setup and storage or not?
It was both. It wasn't
Okay, good,
storage.
good.
We still have to figure that out, but it was setting up and taking down. But those prices didn't include shipping.
Okay, so they didn't include shipping. So,
But it
you know, I mean,
included
this
the loss
is an
of the
emergency.
meters. No,
Yes.
I
Yes, they included loss of parking revenue. Yes.
okay. I just want to make sure that we're clear on what that is. So, because I obviously was not clear. So I'm sure there are people in the public who were not clear that that was an all-inclusive.
So delivery is approximately another $30 per barrier.
Great.
How many barriers are we
Well,
talking?
I want to add that thank you, Nicole, for bringing that up. I read a lot of the responses that they were sent, and I was a little bit, disappointed to hear some of the comments because we are trying our very, very best to assist and to help. Let's remember that we also had been affected by the COVID-19. We also have loss of revenue. We also have suspended parking in our parking spaces. We've been losing that revenue already for months. So acquiring this additional expense is also a hit on the village, which we will know. We still don't know what the damage that COVID-19 is leaving us with. So I just want to make sure that everybody understand that we are trying our very best within our needs to be able to support our businesses, because we do value each and every one of you, not only the restaurants, but every single nail salon or every single other type of business that sits on our downtown.
Okay, so I mean, there's a lot to consider here, and I did mention a number. So I just want to know how people feel about it, and then we can move on. So any thoughts?
I'm okay reducing it, Mr. Mayor.
To $250?
I think $250 is too much of a reduction, but if everyone wants it, I will go along with it.
I'm comfortable with $250.
Trustee Taylor?
I'm comfortable with $250.
Trustee Now?
And as low as we can go. It's my goal.
Okay, Trustee Patino?
I'm in agreement that lowering the rate will help some of the businesses, the smaller restaurants, be able to afford this. So I'm in favor of the $250 cost, monthly cost for the park.
And Trustee Sullivan?
Yeah, I'm okay with the $250. I think any lower than that and it becomes too big of a burden on the village to subsidize. And I think that there should be some discussion about the number of total parklets that we're going to do or allow, and the number per business, how we're going to work that out.
Right, that's a good suggestion. So I think we should make it clear that, in my opinion, maybe, a maximum of 3 per storefront, but it couldn't be any wider than the storefront. I don't, Ed, that creates a problem if it goes beyond the storefront.
Yeah, that would be a good suggestion, Mr. Mayor.
And then ideally, we have a max somewhere between 20 and 25 so that it's, that would be around 10, 15% of the total parking downtown. And it would have, that way we minimize the impact on the spaces that are available for the remaining businesses and the residents who use those spots.
And in conjunction, I think someone suggested this earlier, but to have as a condition of doing this, that those establishments would have their employees and owners park in off-street parking, preferably at 99 Cedar. In other words, to keep as many spots on the street free as possible.
So
I
Christie,
personally advocate for that very strongly, and I think that that should be a business practice for downtown business owners all year round, regardless of purpose.
25, a maximum of 25 spots would be 12% of the available spaces.
Okay, so 250, 25 spaces, up to 3 in the width of your storefront. That's where we are.
Starting
And
as soon as we
I can
can,
include, I'm sorry.
starting as soon as we can, ending October 30th. And the street closure of June 27th. The board has, listened to the comments of the other business owners and pushed it back to 5 o'clock. So 5 to 10. Is that correct?
That's correct. Thanks for clarifying that. Thank you.
And I can
And this is
include,
not to say that
the
we will
requirement
do
for
any more street closing.
the employees. I can put that as a condition of the license agreement. I can put it in as a bullet point of responsibility of the person who will be licensing the spaces on the street. So that can be added very easily.
Okay, and as I was saying, I don't think that the fact that we've authorized the street closing this week doesn't mean we're going to continue both the parklets and the street closing. Although I think the street closing does present opportunity for all residents to safely go outside. So we'll follow it up as it goes along. But certainly, I think the parklets are an important step for our downtown. So.
Is it October 30th or October 31st? I'm sorry, that was a change.
October 31st.
The last day of the month, I think, is the 31st, which is Halloween, right? Do we close the streets on Halloween? We usually do, right? It's
usually a street closure for the Halloween parade.
Yeah, that's a Saturday.
We might need to do it on the 30th so that it's already taken down by the time we do the Halloween parade, if we should be able to do that.
Okay, is everybody okay with the 30th then?
Does that work for the DPW?
Well, it's a Friday as opposed to a Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Works
let's do.
better, I think. Jennifer?
Okay.
Jen, you're okay with that?
I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
To get everything down and stored away on Friday rather than on Saturday, 30th rather than the 31st. So we can have the Halloween parade.
Whatever you guys want.
Okay.
All right, let's do the 30th. Okay.
Yeah, there's excuse me, Mayor. There's a couple people that have been watching the whole
Right.
our whole episode in case.
Are there any discussion from the public at all, Jennifer?
Yes. Melissa, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me? I'm on one AirPod. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, thanks. So I just wanted to say thank you to the board for listening last week. I don't want to take too much time away from any of the restaurant owners because I know that it's late and everyone's been waiting. Can you hear me still?
Yes.
Okay. So my point is, thank you for considering the employee parking. I think that's great. I just wanted to say that as a retail business, obviously this is going to affect us because it's going to help obviously bring traffic downtown and allow our village to have something unique and innovative that attracts business. And I think that's great and I fully support it. Again, this isn't something that a retail business could necessarily participate in. It truly is for the restaurants, and that's fine, and it's fantastic, and I think we need to do that. I just want to say that I think it's really important to be super conscientious about the amount of spaces though that are given. I believe that it really should be limited to two, or there should be more limitations, because three starts to get incredibly excessive, especially on Main Street where we don't have a ton of parking available. And I also just wanted to ask the board to please consider helping the existing parking problems that have been in place in the village since I've had my business, where we have a really strong residential parking issue on Main Street where the meters are not enforced, and the meters end early and the enforcement ends early. So residents come and they park in the commercial spaces around 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they stay there all night. And it creates a log jam in terms of the healthy flow of commercial parking. So if there's any additional considerations that can be made to extend the meter hours, to put more enforcement at the meters so that people actually start to abide by meter rules, I think that would be a huge benefit, in addition to the employee parking, which obviously, I'm more than happy to do, and I actually ask my employees to park down the street anyway, but I think that's great. So that's it. And then last but not least, like, as a retail business who wouldn't obviously take part in this program, I would be more than happy to do anything I can to help fundraise, to help any of the businesses that aren't able to afford this, to find a way to offset the cost. And I also ask that the board consider a way for businesses that even 250 may be a difficult challenge right now, to allow for another way. One of my thoughts was maybe to cancel Fairy Festa, because to be really honest, it is a terrible thing for a lot of businesses. And I think a lot of us feel the same about it. It's really not for us. And at the end of the day, maybe there's some expenses that could be found in other village gatherings that aren't safe during COVID that could help funnel, to help offset costs even further. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Is anybody else, Jen?
Yes, we have Michelle. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I just want to say, I want to reiterate what Melissa said about the resident spaces. Actually, at the beginning of the shutdown, when we were at the restaurant late one night and every business had just been closed down, and so there was basically just resident cars on the street at about 8 o'clock at night. I took a picture and it was a lot of parking spaces. We actually live in Nyack, and we lived downtown in Nyack for 3 years. There was never an expectation of being able to park in front of businesses on Main Street. So I just want to, point out that it is a bit unique that, residents are able to park in front of the businesses, and it's not just the employees that are taking the spaces. Nyack actually does not allow overnight parking in the metered spaces in front of businesses. It's allowed on the side streets. So I would point that out as, something that needs to be looked at just as heavily as asking employees to park off street. And that's it.
Thank you, Michelle.
And we have one more person.
Okay.
Corey, can you hear us?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Corey on behalf of Piccola Trattoria. I wanted to say thank you for working so hard to find a solution that works for all of the businesses. We really are greatly appreciative of everyone's time and brainstorming. With respect to the number of parking spaces, while obviously, 3 spaces is better for the restaurants because we'd have more room for seating, we think that it's probably not best for the other businesses as well as the residents. So we would be supportive of a cap of 2 spots per restaurant, just because it almost feels greedy to take more of the spaces if it's harming others. And then lastly, we'd be happy to collaborate on any fundraising efforts if there's anything that we could do to help to, raise money to offset the costs.
Thank you, Corey.
Mr. Mayor, can I address a few things?
You can address a few things, sure.
Okay, so I live in the downtown and I walk often the street of Main Street and Cedar. And it is an undeniable evidence that there is a problem in the downtown. It's been going on for 15, 20 years. So to some of the business owners that made some remarks in reference to alternative parking, we have worked endlessly in finding solutions for the problems that we have in the downtown, including the residential permit that I was a part of getting approved before I was even sitting as a board member. So it is not that we overlook these challenges. We often revise it and revise it and revise it. I live on a street where that parking lot of 99 Cedar sits empty 24/7. We have encouraged business owners to encourage their employees to park in there, and we have not been successful. So I'm very glad to see that now we are being asked to utilize the parking of 99 Cedar for the employees that they actually work in the area. We definitely know that there is an issue. We see it, but lately there has been plenty of parking around the village with the whole thing of the COVID-19. So we are aware that there is a problem. It's not that we don't constantly are working on it. So it's kind of funny that I hear that, you know, we need this solution. It's been going on for 15, 20 years. So it's nothing new to us. One recommendation that I have also for some of those retails is come up with creative ways of how you promote your business and take advantage of having extra people dining outside. I go to many different places where beautiful boutiques have racks of stuff outside displaying what the products that they offer. In addition to that, to the restaurants, you can charge a fee for outdoor seating. That's just recommendations. I recently went out to eat and my check had $1 fee for dining out. So just think about of ways that you can compensate or help yourself in order for you to kind of make an additional income from all of the expenses that all of us have currently acquired due to this COVID-19. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready to move forward with this. I just want to make sure we're all on board with it's $250 per spot per month. It's a maximum of 3 spots, no wider than the storefront, and a maximum of 25 spots total. Are we in agreement with all that? Before I put it out there?
I would just say if we could do 2 and then see if we have leftover to meet the max of 25, then relook at having 3 be an option. But if we can come out the gate with 2, I'd prefer that.
How do we feel about that?
I'm okay with it.
I think that might be a good idea in the sense that if we don't want businesses to get shut out if they want to do this, and we're going to have a cap that if we start with 2, and then we would allow if after a period of time there's not a take up, that we offer them out to people who have storefronts wider than 2. There are not that many storefront or restaurants certainly that are wider than 2. Ed, I think you had looked at that at one point. Do you remember off the top of your head?
I didn't look at them all, no, but out of the 6 or so that did commit as of this morning, 3 of them wanted 3.
Anybody else? You got any number?
That's fine to start with 2. I think we should get those answers pretty quickly because I think there should be one order placed for the barriers and one, one cohesive build out. I don't think we want to break this up into a lot of different parts and in so doing create either additional expense or additional labor for the village. So.
I think that we have to go, like, we have to move almost immediately, like tomorrow. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jen or Elisa, Ed. Or we run the risk of not even having enough barriers for what people want, right?
There was that risk, so, we already ordered some.
Oh, you already ordered some. Okay. So that's all some of the problem. But I think we should have a deadline for.
It'll be difficult to draft a license agreement when it's going to immediately come back and be altered for 3. I mean, we're going to be collecting the monthly fee up front, so per month. So I don't know, to get a definitive answer soon before the license agreements go out for signature. I I would need that information pretty quickly.
Yeah, hearing those comments, maybe it just is impractical to do the two-stage process for subscription. So I'm not, if that's the case, I'm not against people who want 3 and it doesn't exceed the width of their storefront or restaurant to be able to get 3. So
Okay.
I withdraw my previous suggestion.
I agree with Larry, because the sooner we get this done, the better. And I mean, the restaurants are hurting, as we all know, and I think the sooner we can get the barriers up, the better. And if we have to wait, you know, another week or 2 to get final answers on people, I don't think that's going to be that helpful.
Okay, so the motion is for 3 with no wider than the width of the store. So is there a motion to authorize a pilot program to offer licenses for on-street parking space known as parklets to be used by adjacent restaurant owners as additional space for outdoor dining? Laura Lee adding the language of $250 per month per spot with a maximum of 3, no wider than the storefront, maximum of 25 spots, with the condition that the restaurants who committing to this have their employees park at 99 Cedar Street.
Okay.
I have to.
I have something to say.
No more, please.
But I just don't think it can be limited to just restaurants. While restaurants are more likely to want this than anybody else, I think it has to be offered to any business on Cedar and Main that is interested.
Right.
My only comment.
And that's part of the resolution you have in front of you. Yeah.
I know, but Vinny just said the motion differently. So.
I read the old motion. That is correct.
Sorry.
Thank you for that.
And that they have to be conducting business, to be clear, conducting the
Is
business.
there a motion? Trustee Sullivan. Second, Trustee Nell. Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. We've really spent a lot of time on this parklet situation. So thank you for your time and work on this.
Hope it pays off and everyone has a great, successful season.
So now we added to the agenda a discussion regarding the lateral parking. So I don't know if we're ready to come to any decisions yet. I think there's some talk with the State Liquor Authority. It was involved. So maybe Laura Lee, you could shed light on it, or Alyssa or Charlene. Could someone shed light on that?
I know Alyssa was in touch with them and they were going to run it up the flagpole just to be sure that the municipality could extend the municipal space laterally along the sidewalk in conjunction with requiring the business owner to obtain direct permission from the adjoining business people and property owners on to the right or to the left or to both. I know that that SLA guidance was a little murky, so Alyssa reached out, I reached out, but I believe that the process of extending the municipal space by filing the same kind of plan you'll need to file for your street closure, coupled with the licensee's proof that they have obtained this permission, will be, you know, that will be a comprehensive file to send to the SLA.
Lori Lee, in the meantime, while you're working with the SLA, or you and Elisa are to get this sorted, is there any reason that restaurants couldn't, if with permission, obviously, have tables where they did not serve alcohol? Because there are a number of patrons who wouldn't necessarily, you know, want to have alcohol, and they might be able to sit in these sort of wings while even as soon as, well, maybe immediately if they're not getting alcohol.
Well, I think, again, you'll need to have an agreement in place because you're giving them permission by licensing public space. So there does need to be a formal process, indemnification, liability insurance to these additional areas. Or
there also has to be an agreement between the parties, because remember, everyone is responsible for their sidewalk in front of their retail or residential area of the property. So they would have to get the approval of whether they have SLA approval or not, they would have to get approval of that property owner and indemnify them also.
Would they
But
need,
if the SLA takes the longest, I mean, if they're still hanging out there and the rest of this is resolved, then they could go forward probably with no alcohol in those adjacent.
As long
sidewalk
as they
stands.
have the approval of their property owner and they indemnify both us and the property owner, then that, yes, you're right.
If we're looking to the food establishments, clearly they would need to bring forth an application for a sidewalk cafe permit, because part of that process requires them to indemnify and to provide their insurance. In addition to the standard stuff for a regular cafe permit, having this additional documentation that the adjacent business owner, the adjacent property owner, if they're not the same person, to get both permissions to have this shared use of the sidewalk space.
that was going to be my question, if this would be both the business owner in addition to the property.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And
But
Lori
that's great
Lee, oh, sorry, I was just going to say, Lori Lee, you had said that maybe you could get a template together to make it easy for the businesses to
Yep.
draw up that agreement. So maybe you could get that sooner rather than later. I can distribute to the businesses if they're interested in seeking that agreement with an adjacent property owner.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I guess we
and
can
are you
move that
just
along.
looking at doing this for restaurants, or are you looking to expand this to retail space as well?
Well, I know
that
that
it was just going to be the people who actually qualify for the sidewalk cafe permit.
Yeah, I think this is an extension of a sidewalk cafe permit. So you need the original sidewalk cafe permit first, and then you want to extend in front of someone else's property. You need the agreement with the property owner who you're extending in front of, and submit it with the cafe permit or in addition to the cafe permit to the village.
All right. Yep. And I can just do a little standard form letter that provides the consent with the appropriate signature lines. So there's a meeting of the mind if the business owner and the property owner, if they're two different people, really would need to sign on to the shared use of the space. Okay.
Okay, that's, so I don't need to do a motion at this particular time or authorizing anything? Laura Lee?
No, you would throw this out as a pilot program along the same lines as the parklet. I would stress that it is for purposes of health and safety, because that's where we are in terms of.
Right, so we're voting on authorizing. So we're gonna vote tonight on authorizing a pilot program?
Yeah,
Okay.
to permit the.
So is there a motion?
To permit the extension
authorizing
laterally
use
for sidewalk cafe permits.
And it is it's village property, so you have to allow it.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna make the motion, and Laura Lee, you're gonna clean it up in legalese afterward.
No, I'm gonna make the motion. And then you're gonna second it, right? That's how it
Is
works.
there a motion? I think only the mayor can ask for a motion. So is
Yeah.
there a motion to permit the extension of lateral restaurants or tables or shopping? Actually, it has to be limited.
Extension of cafe permit.
Yeah, the lateral expansion of a sidewalk cafe permit.
Is there a motion? Trustee Nell, second. Trustee DeRozzi. Any further discussion? Great. All in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. I think we've done a lot for the downtown. Let's hope it works. Okay, let's move on to the minutes. The draft minutes of meeting of June 9th, 2020. Are there any comments about it? Having heard none, is there a motion to adopt the minutes of the Board of Trustee meeting of June 9th, 2020? Trustee Taylor, second. Trustee Patino. All in favor?
I
That
vote for
passes
Lori Lee's
unanimously.
suggestion that we stop doing voting in the minutes.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. But
I know.
You're supposed to say not an old dog, but that's okay. So are there any announcements or reports? Trustee Sullivan, do you have anything?
I do think, and Charlene or Ed will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're laying the sod this week at the Gould Park pool. It will take about 2 weeks to set. And
Yep.
as soon as that's laid and set, the recreation department in the village plan on opening the pool. And the really good news is that we are now allowed to do swim lessons again. So Kendra is creating a new program for that. I don't have any details on it, but it will be forthcoming, and knowing Kendra, it will be great. There is another movie night on Friday, Toy Story 4 at Mercy for the drive-in, and you have to reserve it starting at 10 a.m. tomorrow. It does sell out within like an hour or two, so anyone who's interested should hop on the rec department site at 10.
Thank you. Trustee Nell?
No, I'm done talking.
Deputy Mayor Casal?
The only thing I wanted to say, I want to thank Charlene for everything that she's done for this village, for all that she's taught us, all the programs and things that she has created. And more importantly, personally, I want to thank her for our friendship and our continued friendship. So thank you, Charlene.
Same.
I second.
Trustee Patino?
Yeah, I'd just like to encourage everyone to donate what they can to the Gould Park Playground. I saw a recent letter from Parks Department about the closing of that fundraising effort and the matching funds. So now's the time. If you are considering it, do it now. Don't wait till it's too late. Your donation will be doubled, and that's an important part of this. I will be contributing my sort of meager Board of Trustees compensation for the year to the Parks Department for the playground. And so I hope everyone who's listening to this could chip in a little something. Make our park a better place.
Impressive. Thank you. Trustee DeRozzi?
You're muted.
Thank you. Who muted me?
I muted you because I heard you just typing and moving things along.
Well, you know, multitasking 12 hours later. I just really want to thank Charlene for all of her support. I mean, from the moment that I actually saw her being sworn in, ironically, this lady was sitting next to me while I was attending a Board of Trustees meeting. And the last thing that I knew it was that she was our newest village administrator. So I am very happy that for the years that she has served with us and all of her guidance and her support to the village and to myself personally, educating me about how to do this. I also want to send a big thank you to everybody in the staff, including Ed and even Charlene and Alisa, for everything that you guys have done to try to put this program together for our downtown businesses. I know how much work it went into it, and all the emails that have been back and forth. You guys have been a lifesaver on making this happen. So thank you so much. And my last thank you goes to the Youth Services Council for the movie nights at the Mercy College. Of course, that this is being done as we used to do it on a normal basis at the waterfront. So thank you so much for all the work that the guys have put into this and everything that they continue to do for the youth as well as the village. Thank you.
Trustee Taylor?
I don't have anything other than Charlene, thank you.
I agree.
It's a team effort, guys. It was a team effort.
Charlene, so we have about 2.5 hours left before midnight. So do you want to say anything and fill up that time?
I thought I said what I had to say. I just want to say thank you for allowing me to work with you, because it really has been great. All of you contribute your own little piece to each and every project. And I think it comes out better because you all do communicate. Vinny, during this time, I have to say, I don't know how you did it. because when we were doing it, like all of us as a team had no idea as to where we were going to go and what we were going to do. I don't think anybody did, but Vinny started attending our meetings, our staff meetings, and gave us a little guidance as to where we were going. And I just want to thank him for that. And I know the staff wants to thank him for that also, and also for all the work of the staff. So hopefully you'll let me come to the opening of the pool. And I don't want to swim. I don't want to swim. I just want to come. And I'll be around. I mean, I get my hair cut, and how can I not have Sam's Pizza? There's a lot of things that Dobbs has that I can't live without. So I'll see you all.
I want to just thank you for everything that you've done. You've been a great mentor on this. You called the coronavirus when it first came out back in January, and you were right about it. I have to say that thanks to you, we were prepared better than a lot of other towns, villages, and municipalities. So you were right on spot on bringing that to our attention, and you had the right level of response. So thank you again.
Just call me Cassandra.
And I've always valued your opinion. You've always said it straight, and I thank you, and I'm sure I'll be seeing you again. So on that note, I'd like to adjourn this meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting? Trustee Taylor, second. Deputy Mayor Cassandra. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
And that was a motion to close.
A motion to close.
Thank you.
Right.
Finally.